Yeah.
We are live. Linda. We're live. Okay, there we go. All right, this is the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee on Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, and starting the meeting at 9:16. Are you coming? Jesse? Yes, it started at 9. No, we gotta go. You coming? Okay, fine. Oh, I thought it was like next week.
Let us sound like five.
We can't babysit everybody.
No.
All right. So we've started the meeting. I have to go through the roll call, make sure everybody can hear us since there's nobody up online. Neville?
Here.
Tim?
Here.
Tom?
Here.
Eleanor?
Here.
I'm here and staff?
Here.
Glenna? Okay. The first exercise is normally we go through the list and find out who's, not what they're getting, but who's in and who's out.
Oh.
So, you know, whether you think it merits being staying in or or it's not, or doesn't qualify because of whatever they applied for. That's normally what Ken always did, is that who's in and who's out. So we're just gonna go down the list here. We got historic preservation up first. St. Paul's. Yeah.
We were going to approve the minutes from
Oh, yeah.
October 16th.
We have a quorum called to order, establishment of a quorum, yeah, approval of the minutes, October 16th. Does anybody have any comments about those?
No, so moved.
All right. Eleanor made a motion to approve, Neville seconded as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There's nobody on there. We don't have to do a roll call.
And the agenda.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay, Neville made a motion to approve the agenda. Tom seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Here we go. St. Paul's, in or out?
I would make a motion that we leave it in for discussion.
May I ask a question, point of order?
Yeah.
For you. All the talk about, I was laughing when I was reading the minutes because it was all me all listening about the contingency fee, but have these amounts been adjusted or are these the original ask amounts?
Original ask.
Okay, so as we go through this and we eliminate or don't, and then we pare it
We
down.
pare it down.
Okay,
This is just, do they merit staying in, meet the criteria
Gotcha.
or out?
Okay.
And I'm not in favor of that amount. I'm just,
no, I understand. I just
Okay.
wanted to be clear on the order of operations here. Thank you.
Okay. So. Somebody, Tim made a motion to leave them in. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Eleanor seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, my comment, Village.
Make a motion that, please. I would like to fund that.
second,
Okay, Neville led the motion to leave them in. Tim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Mariah Mitchell.
Motion to keep them.
Okay, I made a
Second.
motion to keep them in. Tom seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Nantucket Community Service, the Landmark House.
We can,
Is that,
I motion to keep it. in.
okay, there's
Second.
Neville seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Remain.
I make a motion to leave it in for
For
discussion.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's an interesting project.
I love the building.
oh, it's prominent,
It's a cool.
it's very unique.
The collaboration between the town and at this being a pilot project.
Yeah. So is there a second to Tim's motion?
Second.
Tom second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, NISDA,
Can I ask a question on this now?
yeah,
That amount, so that was the original amount, but didn't they give us another amount? When we were talking to them, we asked them to give us a price on the second house, but we already had the first house funded.
yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah,
discussion.
I know they had two houses.
Oh, I didn't see
One
that.
was already funded. So we asked them to give us whatever that new amount was for that second house.
I think. that was my-
Yeah, they had two cottages on foundations, east and west cottage. One was a shell, one was
Already funded.
hanging there. Has septic systems, et cetera, et cetera. And my concern is that they still have, how much, Glenna? Like 300 grand left?
Something like that.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I agree, but I thought that, I know that they had said that they would, send us the amount for the second house, they were only interested in this. in
yeah, in one house.
Yeah, because the other one was already, you know.
I saw that they send those, the estimates that we'd asked for, right, with the estimates broken down, contract.
The estimates were concerning to me
Yeah.
from building, being in this environment. I was like, what? They already have the building.
Mm.
So do you want to leave it in for discussion or,
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
should. I'll move that.
all right, Tim made a motion to keep it in for discussion. Is there a second? Neville, was that you? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think there's gonna be a lot of discussion on that
Yep.
one. The NHA library.
I'm in favor of that.
Okay, Neville made a motion to leave in. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Tim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Greater Light.
Yeah, motion, keep that in.
Neville made a motion to keep it in.
Second.
Tim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Town Clerk.
Same thing.
Neville and Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Interfaith Council Rental Assistance.
Move.
Okay, Tim made a motion to keep it in. Neville seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam
Affordable
Chair,
House-
just to note, I
Yeah.
am no longer an employee of the Interfaith Council, so I can vote on those. Right.
Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Let's leave that out until everybody's here, because that's not actually an allocation out of the 4 million.
Mhm.
So let's move past that. Nantucket Lighthouse School,
Yeah.
leave them in. Neville made a motion to leave them in. Is there a second?
I'm not second. No, second.
Okay, Neville and then Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Racket.
For discussion, let's leave it in.
Okay. Is there a second?
All right, for discussion, I'll say.
Okay, Neville second. All those in favor? Okay.
Yeah.
So then we go back. We have barring the 10 million, which is a separate issue. We have 6 million, Glenna, right, in requests?
13. Wait.
No, without the
in
six,
request
6,596,340, right? Without that 10 million,
Oh, without the 10 million,
Yeah.
yes.
okay. So,
Give me that amount again, 6 million.
6,000,000,
hold on,
596, 340.
Glenna, we don't know how much is in each one of the reserves for the three, do we? We don't have a lot.
Unfortunately, not yet.
I've gotta find out how much is left in the three reserves. I don't think we have much. I think we spent it all,
I think we did.
but I gotta figure that out. And we have 1.2 or 1.5 in the undesignated reserve.
And if we have 4 million, Madam Chair?
Yep.
Can we go 10% for each category, which is mandatory,
Yep.
right? That brings 1.2 million that we must spend in 3 categories.
As well as 350. We don't have to do both of those this year, the two bonds,
Mhm.
but we do have to do one 350, so the 350 is coming off the top.
But that does count as the 10%, towards
No.
the 10%. Yeah, it's a affordable housing category.
Yeah, but I think it's separate because it was pre-allocated.
I thought that was Ken's motive, that
He
5
could-
million brought a bond payment about the equivalent of 10%. I thought.
I
that
don't think
was-
so, but I will check, because there was some question about that a long time ago. So we just take the 350 right off the top anyway.
Well, we have to.
Yeah,
You're right in the context of we have to do that, because we've got to make the payment. But it does count towards categories of affordable housing.
I have to call the state on that, because I remember we were going round and round about this, 10 years ago when we started this thing. And we did the bond, the first bond for Sachem's Path, or the Fields actually was the first bond.
Can you remind me the amount we have to spend? 4 even.
It's 4 and change, it's 4.2. He just was, you're safe at 4.
Mhm.
If we get another 2, that's great,
That includes
but he
all
hadn't
the
gotten the allocation
the
back. from the
admin
state yet.
and the,
The admin has to come off the top
Salary
of that
and-
also. What is that, Glenn? Is that 5% of the admin
So 5% off the 4.2,
or 4, either way?
right?
Yep.
Could I
5%.
make a suggestion?
Yeah. Does anybody have a calculator?
Yes.
On my phone.
Could I suggest we go through the list again? Not for the purpose that in a row, but the ones that we want to fund in total, if we could do that. That would kind of streamline the discussion down to an amount, and it would also streamline this discussion down to the ones we don't have to waste time on.
You can say that's a motion.
Well, no, we gotta go through them one at a time.
Right.
And you had figures that you had pulled out. Do you still have your list of what's pulled out as far as contingencies? That was on a separate list for me.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know.
Tim wanted to go through the ones that we want to fund fully
Right,
and then take them off the top
right.
and then see what we
Well,
got
just-
left.
It'll help us get to knowing.
Get somewhere.
I agree with that.
Okay, but we're trying to figure out because there were contingencies and some other things that Eleanor had on her
Well,
list.
Could I suggest, rather than get bogged down in the weeds on that, let's just go with the numbers we have for now?
Well, I don't want to do that because there was a substantial amount came off the top of one of these smaller
Right,
names.
this is only the first inning though. You know, I'm not trying to get us to the finish line. I was just trying to get us to the discussion point of the ones that we gotta talk about. What we want to trim.
All right, does anybody, I mean, I'm looking at Mariah Mitchell, I'm looking at 100% less whatever you have in your list that had to come off of there.
Okay, are you on number 3?
Oh, I was on number 2, my common village.
Well, I think we
Can we
should,
start
the
there?
reason why I'd like to fully fund that is that they're getting 2.5 times
Well,
back.
Yeah, but if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest we start at the beginning, and I was gonna suggest we fully fund my common village, we start with that one,
Okay,
that's right at the top.
is there anybody who has a question about that?
I'm all on that one too.
Okay.
So we take that off, that's good.
Okay.
Then we go to,
Then
So
we have
we're
Mariah.
fully funding that?
For the sake of this first exercise.
For the record, Neville made that motion to fund my common village and
Well-
who's second?
Tim.
Tim.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Doesn't mean we can't revisit it.
I know.
okay.
It's just.
Well, just so you know, we're
First
under, the housing authority is under state and federal restrictions. We don't have anywhere else to go.
no, that's okay.
That's it.
I love the leveraging of that.
Yeah. We're getting another group from last year. Mariah Mitchell,
Fully fund.
is there any discussion about that one?
Second, as I said, when Jason was here, I met with them and saw it, and I felt confident that it was well in need of what they want to do.
And they really take care of their
Yeah.
properties,
Yeah.
really. Landmark House,
Fully fund.
is there any discussion with that one?
Can I get a second on that motion?
There's a second for Landmark?
Second.
Tom, I'm not sure you were here when they came in. Were you here when they came?
No.
It's all the whole handicap access thing is crumbling on the parking lot side.
Oh, I was here for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Georgie, right?
Yeah. Remain, you want to skip that for now?
Yes.
I want to skip NISDA personally.
Me too.
Still running.
Fair Street Restoration, want to skip that one too?
Yeah,
I'd like to fully fund it, I don't know what everybody else.
I'd
No.
like to fully fund it,
I would not.
because we've already funded everything else over there, and if the
That's-
roof is leaking,
That's
we're screwed. Everything we just paid for.
kind of
is
my
screwed.
point why we don't, but
All right, we'll skip that.
no other, I'm on one vote, so, you know.
Mhm.
I'm
Is
one
every-
person. so-
Everybody okay with funding Fair Street?
Here comes Jim.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
First and
Opposed.
Second?
Okay,
Second.
those two. Eleanor was
Put me down for
opposed.
anything.
Eleanor was opposed.
Of 7 Fair Street?
I'm fully funding it.
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
I
start
think it's a
cut-
great project.
We're gonna have to start cutting pieces here and there.
Are we gonna
Okay, Greater Light,
fully fund?
is there a second?
Second.
Eleanor seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Town clerk,
Come on down, brother.
All right, Neville and Tim again, fully fund the town clerk.
You want to bring them up to speed?
I will in a second.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Tim seconded. Interfaith,
Fully
Fully fund.
okay, that was Neville and Eleanor, all those in favor?
Aye.
We'll leave that one out for now. And then we go over to open space, which we have to spend. Lighthouse School,
I like fully fund.
Fully fund.
okay, Neville and then Eleanor, all those in favor? Aye, okay, somebody have a calculator.
400,000 minus 85,000.
Well, there's
85 and
more.
change.
Hold on. Let's start at the beginning.
Add up the amounts.
All right, somebody got a calculator going?
Let me do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Take $4,341,030
Go three of them.
4 million.
from 4 million.
Oh,
We're subtracting at the moment.
Seeing
You
when
go
we get
the-
to zero, which will be
Yeah.
soon. It'll be historic preservation.
okay, minus,
341,030.
Yep.
155,000. What? I'm going off of this. I'm going here. 155,000.
Yep.
182,300. We're leaving that out for a second. The big ones we're leaving out for a second.
yep,
Okay.
$360,065.
yep,
156,695.
Yep.
9,500.
that's it.
No, 380,000.
Okay.
85,450.
And we're skipping NRSA?
Yeah, we're just the little guys.
That's it for this list?
Yeah,
2,329,960.
Is left.
2,329,000.
960. Okay.
Is left.
Okay, what we've been doing, guys, is we went through the list of deciding,
get something different?
ignore this, guys. I had jaw surgery on both sides. That's why this is black and blue and this is all swollen. With stitches up and down the inside. There you go.
You look fine.
Yes, I do. I look like an Oompa Loompa. We went through the list to see who was in and who was out. Right now, everybody's still in. And then, Neville wanted to go through, Neville and Tim wanted to go through and take the little guys and see who we wanted to fully fund off the bat, you know, without the contingencies taken out, without some of the other stuff taken out. So we just did that, which left that 2,000,000.
May I ask a
329.
question on that?
Yeah.
The 2,329,000 that you came up with, is that the total amount of requests or the amount
what's left.
left?
Left,
So. okay,
after we just did
So it's
this.
about 1.7.
It was 4 million minus the ones that
Gotcha.
were read off.
Then you gotta take the 350 off of that.
And the 4
The
million,
2 million is what's left after.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
4 millions
Well-
are our
So-
budget.
But Glenn's gonna check
Yeah.
this math. I
Take-
made a calculator error.
Take 350 off of that, Tom. Take
Yeah.
350 off of that because of the bond payment.
The payments.
Okay,
$1,670,000. $670,040, that's what we've expended.
How much?
$1,670,040, that's what we've expended with what we just went through.
What we just did.
With the 350?
Not with the 350,
No.
no. I did
So
not include
roughly
the
2
350.
million.
So if you want me to include that,
One,
Trying to figure out a starting.
that's two.
it's
okay.
$2,020,040.
No, it's less because if you take 350 off at 2,329,960.
Just for the
It's
sake of
under
this,
2 million.
it's roughly 2 million.
And then we gotta take out administration,
Plus
Right.
amount,
Okay.
Which
just to see what the total is.
which is another
you're saying the same
200,000.
thing, just the other way.
The ones we
She's doing reverse.
This is
put
what
an asterisk next to,
Yeah.
we haven't talked.
I don't wanna get too many different ways of going here. Everybody, one conversation, guys, that Al picks up everything.
I'm just
Then
trying
we
to help
gotta
these
take-
guys catch up with us.
Then we gotta take 200,000 off the top for administrative. If it's 5%.
Eleanor's got it in her head.
Just one.
Well,
Two.
So
So
we
why don't
got
you
about
start with
1.8 somewhere, 1.7.
3,550,000 instead of 4 million, because you're taking 350 for the loan and 200 for.
Yeah,
the-
don't, that just complicates things.
178,960.
So 2,329,960 less 350. Less another 200,000.
So 550.
And that's without taking out contingencies and other stuff that we can take out of here.
Yeah, just, it'll help us get somewhere.
So we got about 1,779,960 to play with on the rest of it.
Could you read that one more time, Andy?
$1,779,960.
Thank you, thank you. So that.
What figure is that?
That's the remaining.
Yeah.
After the,
fund-
after the 350, after the 200.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so it's one, it's, you know, about 1.8 million. Now, on open space, let's go back over there for a second.
Yep.
Right now, we've only got 85. So I've got to check to see if that 350 comes off the top of that. Glenn, we have to check that out.
No, but you're on the right track, Linda, open space.
Yeah.
That would mean. It looks like from all the requests, the only place we can get to our 10% is if we fund the racket club at some number.
At some number.
It's 314,550 is left over from the 400,000.
Yeah.
One guess.
So, but I gotta find out if the 350
I'll bet you
counts towards the
they do.
10%. I don't think so, but I gotta find that out. So that's gonna be an unknown until we meet again.
But that doesn't impact the fact that we have the
We still have to
400,000.
do it.
So again, that number, with 400,000 having to go to open space and the one request for 85 and change leaves
Right.
$314,550 to go towards the other request.
Okay.
At a minimum.
At a minimum. And I'll find out if that 350 for the bond payment. Well,
314
that doesn't work anyway, because the 350 for the bond payment is housing.
314,550.
Hang on a second. That 314,550 is gonna have to go to the racket club because the bond payment is housing, not open space.
Right,
So we have to give the racket club the 314,550.
Why do we have to give the racket club that money?
Well, otherwise it goes back into reserves.
Why don't we put it back in reserve? I would. suggest
I'm not,
that.
I'm personally, I'm not in favor of that, but we're gonna get to that discussion anyway.
Yeah, since you're talking about it, I'm gonna say something.
Yeah. So let's go back to the top of the page here.
You have, a
You
question?
have your list of contingencies and stuff
I
you want
don't.
stripped out.
Unfortunately, I know. I'm
Where is it?
It's at my office. Giant pile.
Can I say something?
John had his hand up first.
I have a
John,
question. Have any of these larger requests given us like phasing, like we asked for,
yes.
which would make it a little easier, like we need this much this year, this much next year, and this much the following year?
Yeah, because I made some of them do it in their
I
application.
know the one we asked specifically was the
Remain.
remain, yeah. So if any others have done it, maybe that makes it a little easier. I mean, remain.
Well, what we should do, people, is bring your books next time. Or take a look at the books ahead of time, because there's only 1 or 2 pages that are really relevant to the discussion, not all the rest of the fluff that they put in the 1099, all the rest of that stuff. Go bring just the page of the request, you know, the figures and how it's all broken down, because that's the easiest way to just cut stuff, because we're gonna have to cut stuff. Because what's left is like $4 million worth of requests here.
well, if,
More than that.
just for the sake of discussion, if we back everything out like we just did, fund the ones in total that we talked about, back out the bond payment, back out admin and fund open space at 314, we end up with 1,465,410.
1.7. We already did this. I already backed out that.
I think, but he's adding the 314.
Oh, the 314, yeah, take
Yes.
that off.
Right.
Yeah, so we're
With
down to
1,4.
1,400.
But we have to take a closer look at each one of these things because Eleanor brought it up when each time everybody came in. take off 20 grand here, take off 30 grand here, take all this off, and there's other things, maybe phasing it out. Because some of these projects like St. Paul's have been phasing and Mariah Mitchell has been phasing for many, many years. Landmark House has also been phasing. So some of these guys are by design and Fair Street have been phasing all along.
Mhm.
So we have to take a look at how much more, how many of these are one-shot deals, like the town clerk. Greater Light. Some of these are just, we're here, we're done kind of thing. Landmark House. So some of these are one-shots and they're not part of a phasing program, but probably 6 or 7 of them have already been parts of phasing programs. But we gotta take a look at those pages much more in detail. So I suggested when we come in the next time that you bring those pages.
Yeah, I'm
You don't have to
sorry.
bring the whole
brought it.
box, just bring those pages. And if you want to bring the synopsis page, that's always a good idea.
I'm
Eleanor?
sorry. I forgot, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring.
No, no.
Well, no,
I do have Eleanor's contingency fees from the first, set of interviews that we had. So I do have some of those numbers here. if
Okay.
you Want them?
sure.
Okay.
Neville, did you want to say something before she does that?
This, procedurally, we, during our interviews, Madam Chair, when we interview the applicants, we ask them to send us, we give them a timetable. The reason why we give them a timetable is that we can all have it and we can actually do it. What we have also done in the past, whether people agree or not, is we have done it ourselves. We have decided that somebody, I'm just picking something out, 380,000, we would go through and we would actually know because we would discuss the amounts ourselves. Now we're a little democracy here. And decide not to fund for this particular item now or not. And then and in some cases, we have even sent them letters telling them we decided not to fund you for this right now, we fund you for this. But we will make the decision here, rather than, because if they have not sent it to us in a timely fashion, it's their fault, so we make the decision.
Are you talking, to clarify, are you talking about when we asked, like, no, last year we did this with several people, applicants, to break out stuff so that we could say, okay, we're not funding the lighting, but we'll fund the windows or the roof?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Because,
and then we would ask them to send us.
right,
the-
like a
the
phasing type.
Yeah.
all right,
the
Jesse,
updated-
Jesse has his hand up.
Yeah,
Jesse?
okay.
If we go that route that Neville's mentioning, I think it would be easier if people were assigned to the projects. Because then we would know who's doing what and that person's responsible for it. Same thing with the information that you're bringing. If we, instead of bringing the whole box, if Eleanor brings a project she's working on and I bring a project I'm working on, then we can have our paperwork and be doing that.
We can do that, but everybody should be completely familiar with what's on that request page.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, that's a suggestion, but maybe that's out of protocol. I'm sorry.
Well, you still have to be familiar with all of them,
I understand.
because otherwise you're limited to just talking about one. There comes Joe. Neville?
What I was gonna say, what you said is correct, except for items, we sometimes will get things that are new, where no one has been assigned to a brand new project. So, but it still falls within that same criteria. And we're also under the assumption that we've all had the proposals, so we've all read them. Like I have my notes, yeah.
I got mine.
I have my notes here, so we've done our homework, and some of us are more efficient than others, like me, I'm not too much. Who would remember these things? So when we have our discussion here, we have our discussion here, so, and whatever we finalize here is what it is. You understand?
I just want everybody to have those pages in front of them on all of these projects, so we know where we can start cutting. Because we're gonna have to cut, because you guys missed it earlier. We have 6 million, other than the 10 million bond, which we'll talk about separately. That's not part of this.
Housing.
Yeah. We have $6,596 and $340 worth of requests.
$400 budget.
So, yeah, on a $4 million budget, and we still have to pull the 350 and the 200 out of that. So. Add
Agreed.
to that. So we're gonna have to cut. Some may not get funded at all, but we usually seldom end up there. We look at their performance and we cut. And we said, well, we can do this right now. Can you keep going? Yes, we'll come back next year. A lot of these are gonna be that way. Some of these, like the roof on 7 Fair Street, you can't do half a freaking roof. And it's gonna wreck everything we just paid to have fixed. So we have to look at the full spectrum of this thing, or the entrance to the Landmark House. We just paid for the roof, the shingling, the windows, everything else, and now you can't get in the building. We paid for the elevator last. Now you can't get in the building because the whole entrance is crumbled. So you gotta look at each project individually, but if we have those little pro forma sheets, just those 1 pages, Joe, not the whole box.
Yeah.
Just the 1 page, and then their synopsis in front of us. Pull them out of the applications, and then we can start cutting and maybe get down to the figure that we've got left. But Joe, to catch you up quickly, the 5 of us went through the whole list to see who was in and who was out. Everybody for the moment, a couple of just for discussion, but everybody for the moment is in. And then we went through and pulled out all the smaller ones we wanted to fund fully without looking at their pro formas at the moment.
Okay.
So we didn't include St. Paul's, big ticket. We didn't include Remain, didn't include NISDA. And we didn't include the racket, but I have
And
to find
affordable
out.
housing we did.
Yeah, affordable housing is different. I have to call the state to
Well,
see
we
if
did
the,
include the.
well, it
rec-
doesn't really matter if I call the state, because the 350 is gonna have to come off
Right,
affordable housing anyway. So it left us with 314,550 that we have to spend or put in reserve for open space, because we only have one tiny little thing besides the racket club. So now we're back to how we want to proceed, where we're going from here.
Still want those contingency fees?
Sure, might as well get those now.
So, St. Paul's Church.
Yep.
There was a contingency fee of 10%. Also for Mariah Mitchell, there was a contingency fee of 10%.
But
Okay.
that was, if I recall, that wasn't of the amount they're asking, it was of like some subset of work, I think. In some instances, maybe. So,
Yeah, there were.
I should have brought
exact
my stuff,
amounts,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
All right, well, these are the minutes that,
No, I know, it was 10%, but like the
Right.
amount was
There was
not
an
10%
actual
of the
amount.
total they're asking, it was some.
Yeah, there's some weird amount.
so I don't, on some of them, I have the exact amounts, but, like for the Nantucket Historical Association,
Which
this is the
project?
Research Library, and
Yep.
that had a contingency fee of 25%.
Yeah.
And then for
There's travel.
Greater Light, there was a contingency fee, and this is how Eleanor called it out, so I wrote it down that way, $21,880.
Yeah, see, there's things we can go after when we look at their profile.
And there's some travel and lodging for some
Yeah, there's
places.
travel and lodging for some, yeah.
My Thomas Village, they had contingency fees of 19,500,
Hold on,
and
My Comet Village, hang on. How much?
19,500. And $22,965.
For who?
For my comment.
That was for my comment.
Both of them?
Mhm.
Both of those
one was
numbers.
travel, one was.
What was the other one?
19,500,
19,500
Yep.
and 22,965.
that's a fair amount.
Well, we can't do anything else on this.
Well, wait, could I comment on that? As long as we're discussing? Or do you want to go through your list
Well,
first?
hang on.
I just
What
have
else do you have?
One more,
Okay.
Remain, they had contingency fee, transportation, housing, so those may be some of the things that we look at.
How much was that one?
One of them was like
I
200,000.
don't have, a number for that.
That was a fair amount.
It was like 200 and something
Yeah.
thousand.
Yeah, we,
That's what I'm saying.
So,
If we go through these things in
10%.
minute detail, we can start cutting stuff out, because we're gonna have to chop off $1 million.
I'm trying to catch up here. So this contingency is something that we don't fund, so that comes out of the request. Is that what
Yeah.
we're getting at here? Just to be
Generally
clear?
10%, but some people do 25.
Okay. No,
And sometimes they
That's-
build it into the actual list without calling out a contingency. We have told people to do that before. But then there's other stuff.
Sometimes we do fund it, John, it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends. Like the
Yeah,
housing
like
authority,
St.
we don't
Mary's,
have any,
fund it.
we have no choice. We have to bond them. They have to be bonded by the state. We have to go out to bid, we got prevailing wage, I mean, it's just a nightmare.
Well, that's what I wanted to comment on, that My Comment Village. That My Comment Village would be a good one for us to leave in, because they get reimbursement based on the bigger number.
Right.
Yeah, 2.5 times from the state. We're just getting $700,000 back from the state right now, 2 years ago.
We'd be crazy not to leave that in.
And that's, they're,
Yeah,
not-
that was
those
the
are,
argument.
those are 1983, 1984, and 1985 structures. Not a stellar building
First
period
40.
here. So that's where we are at the moment. So without everybody being able to parse this stuff out more minutely, we're sort of stuck right here.
I mean, if anybody,
Madam Chair, I'm just gonna say, the only reason why I agreed with all this stuff that we decided to keep in, like My Comment Village, I'm sorry, to go through all this, Mariah Mitchell, the Landmark House,
Fair Street,
Fifth Street,
Greater
the
Light,
Greater Light,
Clerk.
Town Clerk's Records, Interfaith Counseling, and Lighthouse School. The reason why that was very easy for me is because historically, we've been dealing with that. So we know what that is. Even the amounts, like they are a conservative amount compared to what this, when they started. So basically, I'm dealing with things that we already have a history of. Historically, we've been funding these projects very successfully. They've been very good with it. That's why that was easy for me.
but even those have stuff that we can cut.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, just number one, the St. Paul's, we set that aside just because it was a big number
Yeah.
for now. Okay.
Yeah. Because we've been working with St. Paul's, we handicap access, the tower multiple times, the roof, the Tiffany windows we paid for because they all had to be reset in that church.
they have phased that very
They have
methodically. It seems like-
methodically, because Dual McIntyre, this was my project for like 20 years now. He was very meticulous about phasing out everything.
Right.
And Bob Felch is doing the same thing. He's a very good steward of carrying on, after Dual left, it's a great loss to everybody when Dual passed away. But this is, I think, the biggest amount they've asked for, if you look back at their previous asks. And I think this is the last thing they're coming to us for, because the handicap accessibility is done. But the difference with them, if you look back at what they asked for, you can split that one. Because one was, I believe, was it the roof, or there was something that was much more
Those egress and
impactful.
access stuff.
They
And
had
then
the
you got the
leaks.
redo of the basement and you have the AC unit. So that, I believe, if you took a real close look at St. Paul's pro forma, you'll see where they can phase that.
Oh, yeah,
So it may
Yeah,
not be $1 million. at the moment.
Fireproofing, and there was an egress, fixing the egress, that spiral staircase.
Yeah, and then the AC because of the basement. So there's certain things we can pay for and other things that can maybe wait. And Bob did say that some stuff that could wait.
the other great thing about St. Paul's is they're very good about trying to raise
Money,
money
yeah.
themselves. We're not just the only funding source.
Well, I have, they had a 10% contingency in lodging, which was 7,300 and 42,500. And then they had the fire suppression was 325. Egress Gardner Hall was 139,300, and they're raising 2 million themselves. So there may be, the fire suppression, I think, was their number one goal.
Yeah, one of the
That's what I
things they
have.
called out that they're paying for completely was in their proposal, because
Yeah.
they wanted to show us what they were spending out of pocket.
I remember one of them was putting everything back together, all the finish work. They were talking about installation, but then there was all the finish work that needed to happen afterwards, and they was just like, oh yeah, we're covering that.
Oh, yeah, that's.
But they said their number one goal was the fire suppression.
And the AC.
We have a history of that. We funded the fire protection at the Methodist Church also.
Oh, because it protects, and so all the other churches, it protects what we have been spending millions of
Yeah.
dollars with these churches.
Yeah.
And they're not churches, they're historic resources.
Yep.
So we don't use the word religious institution. It's against the law.
We don't use
Um,
the word church, or we do?
We don't, it's an historic resource, historic structure. There was a lawsuit brought
The age of the building,
somewhere.
not the.
Yeah, we gotta be careful because there was a lawsuit brought, I think, on the South Shore somewhere, maybe Norwell. somebody got mad because somebody was given a church money and didn't give another church money, and nobody has as old structures as we do in this amount. And they brought a lawsuit and they won. So they had to say, well, if you're funding churches, church structures, it's because they are historic resources. Now, obviously, all these churches are historic resources here. So we don't do it because it's a church, we do it because it's an historic resource.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Glenna sent out a document from the CPA office on that court case and sort of a rundown on why we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But maybe that would be good for some of the new members.
Yeah, because we're very, very specific about why we're able to fund these structures. Now, the Mariah Mitchell contingency was 10,000.
Yeah,
Could I
she wanted us to.
suggest we, at number one, St. Paul's, just to help us kind of condense down, that we plug in the number 325 for the fire protection, just for the sake of,
At a minimum.
at minimum?
Okay, everybody okay with that right now?
So right now, we're funding them at 325 and change.
Yeah.
Discussion.
All right, let me give you
Just
some,
a way
let
for us to
me give you some of the other ideas about what happened here. The Fair Street contingency was 72,063. So we've got some pretty large contingencies here. The Greater Light contingency was 21,880, which I think we had.
21,880.
Yeah.
You wrote it down. Good for you.
Yeah, my other
I did
notes, my
call
other
them out.
my other notes are on a different sheet, so I don't have that one. Icon Village, we know, NISDA. I just put down multiple question marks. The racket sports has 1.179 million left from 23 and 24.
Yeah,
And they have 1.6 left to raise to actually complete the project. They have phased because they know they just can't get that much money all at one time.
They have pared back significantly.
They've been pretty judicious about coming back to us and, you know, just stockpiling it. Now we know,
Well, remember now-
generally, we have a rule if you don't start within so much time, but we know that the size of this project, they have to stockpile in order to get to a point, but they have enough now to keep going with design and all the rest of that stuff, is my understanding.
Well, they have 1.7
Yeah.
and they're asking, they need a 1.6.
1.17.
1.17. And they need another 1.6, but they have enough to start the process.
Well, I'd like that. Aren't we all in agreement that we're gonna at least put 314,550 in that bucket this
Yeah.
year?
Point of order, may I now be part of the discussion with this? NRSA, I have formerly recused, but I've had,
You don't have to recuse because
right,
you're here because you're land bank and I'm here because I'm housing authority.
Is
et cetera,
that-
et cetera, et
does
cetera.
anyone object to that?
No,
Okay.
you're
Neville?
supposed to represent that side. of it.
Okay, well, we had a discussion.
Totally right.
Right, I just want to make sure that that's out in the open and,
I mean, Ken wouldn't sit on St. Paul's because he was so heavily involved with St. Paul's. He
Right.
was a deacon, et cetera, et cetera.
The bottom
But you
line.
don't have to.
The bottom line, is this, you know, keep thinking about Ken. Ken did a couple of things when he was here. He was with part of the NHA. He voluntarily declined,
right,
you know, as anyone here can.
right.
If you're on, you can stay there, you can have a discussion. If it's a thing where your salary is involved, then you don't vote.
Yeah.
You don't have a vote, but you can discuss.
No, there's no financial gain whatsoever.
All right,
Yeah,
the only
Actually, it'd be
reason
helpful.
Ken got off because I'm here from the housing authority, which is required under statute. You're here from the land bank, required under statute. You're here from the select board, required under statute. You guys were elected
Park and Rec.
Parks and Rec and Concom. So we don't have to get off. Ken didn't represent, he was from the Parks, he was from Land Bank and then he was
Got your
Parks
name
and
right.
Rec. He didn't have to get off, but when he wasn't on those,
Oh, I know. Yeah, I have.
it could be an issue. So we're all fine sitting, because that's who we're supposed to be representing, and you're representing the planning commission.
Yeah.
So we're all here because of,
Going to 268.
because this, yeah, I mean, we all should, but it doesn't, it's not required because we're all here because we're under state requirement to be here. So that's what we need to do between now and the next time is go over in minute detail what, should come out.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I just want to state for the, I am president of the NRSA, it is certainly not a paid position. So I do the same thing that Ken was thinking. It's just better if I just wanted to say that.
I think, but there was, he did discuss, he just did not,
Vote.
Got it.
vote, in terms of like the.
If you feel better, you should go fill out the same form. That'll protect you, and then you can participate all you want.
It's a simple form, it just says.
Yeah, I filled out. before.
He's doing-
Yeah, yeah.
We've all filled them out. We have
Anybody
all
who's
filled them
civil
out.
servant.
No. All right, so where do we want to go from here, since we don't have those things in front of us? at the moment? John?
So if we pencil in 325 for St. Paul's and 314 for the racket,
Yeah.
that leaves us roughly 1.2 left. Would it be wise to just maybe pencil that in some other places and then and then we have to just move the
Cut 'em?
things all around and then add the contingencies back? At least it's a starting point, maybe.
It is, because that would leave Remain and NISDA.
The Remain was supposed to phase it. I don't know if they did.
I think Remain sent something, didn't they?
I didn't see anything.
Hold on.
It did say something.
I'm pretty sure they did. My notes are for that one or on my other sheet.
I didn't see anything.
Because there was something that was absolutely critical, and I believe it was the gutters. Because they were working with it on that also, and I believe it was the roof.
Yeah.
Because I talked to them about get rid of the skylight kind of thing, because I
Right.
believe it was the gutters and the roof
Yeah.
that were causing
That was the-
leaking coming down through the rest of the building.
Right.
So we're gonna have to take a look at that one.
You're talking about contingency to them, right?
Well, phasing as well.
No, that we asked them to phase it, remember?
Yeah.
To give us what you
Such a big
need,
number.
what you absolutely want first and then.
Yeah, and I'll find, my notes are, my notes about that one specifically are on my other sheet. But I believe that's what they said, because the gutters and the roof were a big problem. Have a seat.
Morning.
I'll give you a real quick rundown. Those of us who were here, we went through the list and voted first what was in, what was out, everybody's still in, some for just discussion purposes, but everybody's still in. Then we went through and pulled out the ones we wanted to fully fund without getting into contingencies and all that stuff at the moment. And then we had to take the 350 for the one bond payment and the 200,000 for administrative required off the top, which left us with a certain amount. And then we realized that we have to allocate another 314,550 for open space to get to the 10%. And so now we're sort of talking about the big ticket items, which right now are St. Paul's, Remain, and NISDA. Because everything else we're fully funding at the moment, but we have unfortunately only 4 million to spend, less the 350, less the 200. And we have 6,596,340 in requests, other than the $10 million bond issue, which is a separate discussion. So now we're discussing all kinds of stuff, and what I asked everybody to do is take a look at just the one page, their pro forma, Steve, and their synopsis. And look at those pages really carefully so we can start cutting contingencies. We can start cutting some other stuff that they can't have. And then come back at the next meeting and be able to parse stuff within an inch of their lives. And then look at where we can phase stuff. St. Paul's can phase, Remain can phase, some of these big ones can phase. So that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you for the recap, sorry.
Do you have comments? Because you've been through this stuff.
I do, but I actually need to get a copy of the applications received spreadsheet.
This thing?
Not for today, I'll mark it up. No, I'm gonna hold comments until a little further into the process. Nothing,
Well, take a look at that one page, because everybody's just gonna bring that one pro forma page and their synopsis, not the whole box. And then we're gonna have to start cutting, because we just don't have enough money, but everything. These are all great projects, we just have to figure out how to allocate funding.
And then, just a quick question, can I get a, breakdown of what we've done, what our total is, what we've doled out based on what Linda was saying and where we are as.
All right,
relation?
circle, I'll give you the rundown of the
No,
ones.
no, I don't need to do it. I'm gonna take your
Okay,
place.
I can give you a copy.
It's 1.4.
I think we're down to 1.1
Actually,
Four
one
now?
point one.
now.
That helps too, doesn't it?
And that's without
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
anything out, Steve.
Yeah.
That's without taking the contingencies out and all the rest of the stuff out. That's just right off the top,
Okay, cool, thank you.
which left St. Paul's, NISDA, and Remain with no funding at the moment.
No, that's not right.
We put 325.
With 325 at St. Paul's because of the,
Then it would be 1.1.
the fire
Right,
suppression.
That's right.
Roughly.
So Remain and NISDA are the unfunded ones at the moment.
Correct.
Unfunded ones. Now, personally, NISDA annoys the crap out of me. Because they still have a lot, hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have not spent on other stuff. We gotta get it back, Glenn, and we gotta figure out what they're doing and get it back.
Wasn't sure if you were anti-art or now you clarified that.
No. And they moved the houses out there. They had grants to move the houses out there.
It's a two-man show.
Apparently one of the houses is okay, the other house, we got these loosey-goosey estimates. I'm still not happy with the estimates that they've given us to finish the house. It was a house before it went out there. I know they've been gutted because of the flooding when they were down on Washington Street. But I'm having an issue with that.
Well, one thing I kind of remember about them is that at least they were funding. They weren't asking for, they were they had other funding.
Not for
Did
that
they?
house, they
No,
don't,
I
no,
don't
they
think so.
don't.
Or was it that they, yeah, okay.
No, you think maybe.
They
Maybe I
have the
was thinking
septic
because of-
systems
I
already in.
thought, I think he might be right. Didn't she say they got a mass cultural grant or something?
There's 25 grand.
Well,
I think they were going to be trying to get one. It wasn't built in. I could be wrong.
Can I say something? This
Nah,
is my project. I've had it for many years.
You've been through it.
I don't really want to discourage them in the public
Agree.
at all. But I can offer my opinion.
excellent.
I operate my thinking in the many years that I've served on this board, both on the board and in the office. What I have seen and I have experienced, I am fine if we do not fund NISDA this year, because and in terms of what monies they have and what monies, I think I may have been the only one who went out there, spoke to them, and I believe we have letters from them, the money that they're giving back to us this year. I'm correct. We should have it.
I haven't
I'm not-
seen that.
Well, I know we brought it in. Like, I was out there and I met with them, and they sent us the letters.
Do you know how much, Glenna?
It wasn't a lot.
It was this year.
Yeah, it was this year.
I haven't seen it. They still have and Brian's beginning to wonder what's happening here.
But the thing that I do know about NISDA is that they have enough money right now. to Continue on with the projects that they have in place.
The barn
And
and
because of that, I am satisfied if we don't fund them this year.
Mhm.
Because I know, they'll come back next year. So I would deal with it like that.
That's
This is my recommendation.
that's important because you're
Yeah,
the,
and I've been with them
advocate.
for many, many years. I know everybody there. Know all of this stuff.
I mean, they are a two-man show. And really it was one for a little
Well-
while until Denise, so that's,
And Denise isn't there anymore.
I know, she's a new
This is
person.
what I don't want to, so I don't want to talk about the two-man show. that this-
No, I'm
They're-
trying to say,
they're-
no, this is not to me,
Yeah, they're an organization.
let me clarify, that they do a lot for the number of people they have, full-time people.
I wouldn't talk about that in that way.
It's not meant to
in
be
a public
disparaging.
forum About any of the organizations.
All right, enough.
About how they run their business.
Okay.
I'm not-
Anything like that.
But,
right,
but I,
no.
no, I'd like to clarify
You can
because
clarify.
I would like to clarify. Neville, I think maybe I'm not expressing myself well, but it's not at all meant to disparage them. If anything, it's meant to say, I'm impressed with what they do.
What
They have
they
an
have
amazing organization. My kids went to all their programs. They're neighbors of ours, of the land banks. They're excellent stewards of their property. They've been as methodical as they can. They have done some wonderful projects. So I'm very impressed
With
with
not a lot of people.
with
That's the
not-
point.
that's my point. So what they have achieved is, to me, impressive, and I admire that. That's all I wanted to say. So,
So another, sorry.
Go ahead.
So another way to say it, if I'm following you both correctly, is they got enough on their plate and they got enough money right now to fund what's on their plate.
That's another
So
way to
let's
say it.
not add any more to it, and that'd be a nice way. to-
That's a
You
good.
just look at this, you can just look at this sheet, you don't have to go back. to
I
the,
mean,
uh,
why would they put in,
Process.
why would they apply for money if they
Because-
didn't?
This is their project-specific amounts. They cannot use the money for the heifer barn for housing. They can't use the money that they're asking for here for the heifer barn or the silos. Each one of these requests, it's not just an open pot. The only open pot we have is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is very specific to a project and you cannot take that money. We can't even vote to reallocate that money unless it's within the scope of the original approval. So what is bothering Brian Turbot is the sheer amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars in their account that they have not used. And this is a big question for the town. I said, why are we, what's happening here? So Glenna, you and I need to follow up with that particular amount because that's the largest amount still out there. Because Brian went really quickly down the list with me, what's still out there. And we got to go back and find out what's happening.
And they need the housing for their, you know, people who come and do their program, teachers and things, like, isn't that what the housing's for?
Yeah, that's what it's for because they used to put them down in flood prone Washington Street
Right,
for a long time.
so there's definitely a need for the housing.
Yeah, so we got to take a very close look at their application. A close look at remains, because we can cut out most of that for now and just do what they absolutely have to
yeah,
have.
right, nothing to do.
And they haven't sent anything, right? Remain? Like,
They only sent a list of organizations that come through the building.
like,
Well, we asked who was in that building.
like if they could get grants or that sort of thing.
Well, at the meeting, they split it up. I have to go back and get the notes off of the other one, because this is the notes of that first bunch that we heard. I have a different sheet for the other bunch, and they had a very specific priority. So if we look at their pro forma, you can see exactly what they absolutely have to have, and I believe it was gutters and roof, because that's where all the damage is occurring. And they're working with the town on the drainage part of it, which I thought was a
I
pretty
understand
interesting
that,
idea.
but they're asking for 100% funding and we asked them.
They know.
We asked them to come back and see if they could find funding from grants or the condo association.
They're paying for the rest of it. They said that at the meeting. And they were very specific about what they needed to do right this second. At the meeting. They didn't have to come back with that, except for who was in the building. We didn't know who the other condo owners were.
They're paying for that, so it's more than $2 million, the restoration?
Oh, they know they have to cover it.
Because, okay. That's not how. I
And that's why they
understood
were
it.
after us to work, because we were working with the town on the drainage
They,
part of
they
it
mentioned
also.
that they re-parched the chimney because it was about to fall into it. and
It
that cost
was.
them $50,000.
Yeah.
So they paid for that, but I
Yeah.
don't think the project itself was, I thought from the meeting, and I only going by memory, that, all of it was to be,
No.
funded.
They gave us the whole scope of the project.
No, I understand.
And they know they're not getting it all, because we always ask that, what happened, can you still go forward with the project, what's your priority? And their priority was the damage from rain. and
No,
water.
They also had a pretty big contingency for off-island
Yeah.
housing for
Huge.
workers and stuff like that. so,
Yeah. So that's why you've
Oh.
got to look at these things individually and pull those pages out. Because the contingencies on some of these are just massive. I
Yeah,
mean, I read that,
25%,
72 million,
$2 million,
72,000.
That's $500,000.
Bear Street was 72,000. So we can pull some of this stuff off to try to knock off that other 2 million that we just can't fund out of that
Mm.
6+
You could,
million.
you could say remain right there is 500,000 contingency.
So those are the big ones. Again, we got to bring those sheets in and start cutting. Just look at those sheets at home and start cutting stuff that you think we can get away with not paying for. And it's going to come down to dollars and cents to get down to that amount that we need to get down to. But I think so we have those things in front of us. A big discussion is that bond request from Housing Nantucket, from Affordable Housing Trust.
I don't know if this might be overreaching, but to the staff, but would it be hard for you to create one booklet of all the projects and that sheet for our next meeting?
Pull it out.
So all the projects here,
All the
the,
projects,
the,
yeah.
The
breakdown
synopsis
page.
and just the financial page.
And
the
then
rest,
just, so we have that for the next meeting.
without all the rest of the stuff.
That's a lot.
Well, when, it is a lot, but when are we going to meet next?
So you have time.
That's the other thing, when are we going to meet?
Well,
Because I
yeah.
think, the next date that everyone agreed upon was the 15th, which is Friday.
Friday,
And then,
That is a lot for Friday. I'm not asking you to do that.
that's a lot
Yeah.
for Friday.
What if she did it
I
for
would agree.
the, well, no, never mind. I was
No,
gonna say
you
just for
can't.
NISTA and.
Yeah.
We all have,
Yeah,
mean, we
I'll
all
pull-
have the
I'll pull it.
books.
I thought.
You
yeah,
guys can just
yeah.
copy it out yourself.
Yeah, I'll pull it. That's not big.
Yeah, there's no point in her doing that, because we all have the books.
So you want,
If the meeting's Friday, I don't think that makes.
no, but like, what do you, so we all have some like comparable things that we're looking at?
Just
Yeah,
the
we have the
synopsis
basically the synopsis and the estimates.
and the request
Right.
page,
Yeah.
and then we start looking at.
I
it
would love
carefully.
doing that, but I don't have time to do it this week anyway.
Oh, for
Oh, we
God's
could, we
sakes.
have it. We can pull it.
Madam Chair, just being mindful of a quorum on Friday, we have the USS Nantucket thing in Boston, so I won't be able to make that.
Yep.
Just,
I'm not here Friday either.
Mm.
Don't look at me.
no, I don't know.
I know there's some folks that are going to be away or just not available.
Then we go to the following week.
following week I'm gone. Not that,
From
No, I won't be
the
there.
16th through, I think, December 3rd, when I go through all the emails, it's either folks were going to be away or not available for, conflicts of other meetings.
All right, the people that are gonna be away before Thanksgiving, are you available to get on Zoom?
I won't, and I won't be back until the.
I don't know, I'll be at work, so I don't know if I can.
Will you work on Friday?
I rearranged my whole schedule to be here this week.
Okay.
Today
May
and Friday.
I ask, show of hands who will not be here Friday? So maybe we could.
But Tom's not here.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
can we, if we're focusing on three, then maybe we could get some comments from them?
Well, we're focusing on all of them, trying to cut them, but,
Okay. But I thought you.
but I
said-
think we need to keep going, guys.
Okay.
I was just trying to facilitate, maybe we get.
We're not gonna make any final decisions, we just need to keep going. And I think we're all in agreement on most of the contingency fees and phasing some of these other things, and we can just drill it down on Friday as to where we go next, and everybody can weigh in when Lana sends it out as to what was going on.
Maybe, if, I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
And I just want to say something. This process is so hard, it's always been hard. We have to make some really hard cuts. We have to do some really solid decisions. The only thing that we have to remember, I'm just gonna say it, is whatever our decision is, and that, let me put that thing before town meeting, we're all one, we're all in agreement, whatever the final decision is. But this is the hardest part of CPC. And we have to make some of these cuts gotta be so hard, it's ridiculous.
Sophie's choice.
Yeah, like, but I am glad because I know that some of you are finding out now. You gotta really read through that stuff. You gotta read it and take notes. So unless you wanna carry that 50-pound bag with you all the time, you gotta read it, take notes and bring it. And those of you who are smarter than a lot of us are, you can have it on your computers. You know, but you really, it's a very, I love this committee. But it's all in this part, it's just all a lot of work.
All my notes are in the
It's
lot.
presentation, unfortunately.
So we have three people that won't be here Friday. Are the three people, is it okay to continue the meeting if those three people are not here? And are they okay with us continuing the meeting?
Yeah,
if
because we're not
here?
making any decisions until
So,
everybody's back here, but we gotta keep going. We gotta start cutting is what we're doing. And I don't think anybody's gonna be unhappy with us cutting contingencies of $72,000 kind of
And
thing.
travel and lodging.
And travel and lodging for certain
instances.
things, yeah.
Those are case by case.
Tim?
I wanna say two things. I agree that it's hard. But if you look just at a 10,000 foot level down at what we've done today, we've got the bones of what this is gonna look like. The numbers may change, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, but we got kind of a bird's eye view. The 900-pound gorilla here is the 10 million.
Yeah.
So we're
So
all
let's-
here.
Let's have a discussion about that
Yeah.
now.
That's really, if we do that, just to give Steve one last comment, the $6 million in requests, we're down to funding everything but 1.1 million, so Excuse me, I said that wrong.
Give or take.
We've got 1.1 million left to fund some of those things. But the 10 million is the one that,
We have to have that discussion.
yeah,
So obviously, they'll take what they can get. He
Okay.
can write it in such a way that we don't get hit hard.
Wasn't he gonna get us something like a proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A breakdown of
He
the
was.
possible financing options? What he was.
well, I think he told us, Eleanor, that he would, he would create a schedule based on what we.
Oh, I
Whatever
see.
we got out, whatever
We
we
can get
wanted.
it. Gotcha.
And they were talking about 5 million at this, that, and the other thing, and not to kill and hurt us, because what we didn't want to do is 350 on the one we have to pay this year. 350 on top of that next year, and then another 350, so we're off 1 million right off the top, all for housing. What has come down from the state, and Tom can probably back this up, is that apparently the CPCs all over the state are doing most of their money towards affordable housing. However, Nantucket has more pre-Civil War structures than anywhere else in the country.
We are a monument.
And have more historic resources than anywhere else in the country at the moment that's functioning, that are actually living. And basically, that they're not gonna give us that home rule petition unless the CPC does more. They don't care that we have $10 million out in bonds already. They don't care that we're funding the rental assistance. They don't care. So they may be more amenable to passing the home rule petition if it looks like we went and gave more money to it. Now, the point of whole Brian's discussion is that how do we do it where we're not gonna get killed, taking $1 million off the top every single year? And he can write it as such that we pay 100,000 towards it and stockpile it, which is Ken set it up that way, that we were stockpiling money over the years for those bonds, at least the first bond, which is why we only have to pay the 350 this year on one of those bonds, because they haven't really gone
They haven't
after the
borrowed
second
it yet.
bond.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
so
haven't bought it the other.
we have to, he said we can still stock, we can put $100,000 in there this year in anticipation of having to pay that bond off. So he can write it in such a way, he can take the bond for longer, which means we're not paying 350 every year. We're paying a lot less. We can start stockpiling on that one when they actually draw on it. But right now, they're still drawing on the second 5 million that we gave them.
Isn't that higher interest though, when you do that?
Well, he's not sure about the interest rates because the interest rates are coming down right now. We have a AAA rating. So there's a lot of things at play here.
They don't wanna take a loan right now.
John?
Eventually, though, at the end of the day, if
You know, he's not
money-
gonna pull the loan right now. What this does is authorize them to do that. Not that they're doing it right now, we have to pay it off right now, we even start paying it off. All the vote would be was we authorize the town on behalf of the CPC to do that. John?
The point I'm trying to make, eventually, for the money to do any good, it's gonna get used, and then therefore it's gonna have to be paid back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
But at
there's
what level
15
we
million out
make
there,
that decision?
at
How long we
someday,
take it?
it's gonna be $1 million off the top every year.
Yeah.
So you
No,
have to
because
keep that in the back of your
paying down
mind.
the other one. So as the other
No, I
one goes
get it.
down, the other one goes up.
But it's just a.
I know we're
tailgate.
kind of in the granular aspect here, but I just want to take a step back. The other aspect of house, I know we don't spend a certain percentage every year on the different categories, and I understand why and so on and so forth. But I do think there's some utility in thinking about that because, let me say it a different way. If we're spending X amount of dollars for the trust, which is a very, important topic, affordable housing, there are other affordable housing initiatives where they may not, those smaller entities may be coming in and they don't have another resource for funding. So maybe we'll have somebody come in, I don't know, some housing organization,
Rental assist.
nonprofit, needs $100,000 a year, and they come in once every 3 years. But if we're saturated and we feel like, hey, we've hit our limit on housing, we're spending $1 million off the top every year, I think we would be less inclined to be then funding these smaller entities that are kind of a one-off. And I'm just trying to look forward over the course of the next 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years, because this is a commitment that is gonna last at least that long. So I think it may behoove us to consider how much are we, I'm not saying we decide that right now, but how much is the CP comfortable being overhead, not just the total amount of money in housing, but how much we want to have to feel like we've got some latitude to fund other initiatives that have to do with housing, that may need some money to get off the ground in order to get matching grants, or various other strategies are required for them to get up running with state funding that can then do more good for the community. You know, in some, I guess, to some extent, it becomes a zero-sum game, where if we put all our money into underwriting the bonds, and it's $1 million a year, where does that leave us with these other entities that are gonna be coming in?
Well, there's something you don't know because you weren't here, the new members weren't here. When we took the first bond, some years ago, we, it was in the proviso that Housing Nantucket, Habitat, et cetera, do not come here. Everything comes out of the Housing Trust, because they have more flexibility. And when we took the second bond, it was the same caveat that, yeah, but they had already won, we just reallocated it. What they did is that they all go there, so they don't come here individually all the time. The only one that does come here is the Housing Authority, because that's a totally different issue. So that's what's happening. So these little guys are all gonna go to the Housing Trust because they're not supposed to come here. I don't foresee us ever spending $1 million a year at one time. Because he's gonna write it out far enough, if it's 20 or 25 or 30 years, as opposed to the 10 or 15, which is some of these other ones. The fields were much shorter and Sachem's Path was much shorter. Those are both paid off now, those bonds.
It is
He's gonna write it out, so it's like 100,000 a year, or
No,
200,000
no,
a year.
no.
That's what he's saying.
700.
Yeah.
700.
So no, if we have to do both of those ones that are already out, it's 750, but right now it's not.
Right, but we need to think as a commission, in my opinion, what, at some point. That money's gonna be spent by the trust, and we are gonna be on the hook for the bond payment, and that's gonna be 700.
Hold on.
700.
Neville,
Right now.
then
right
Steve, then John.
I'm agreeing with everything that you guys are saying, but here, and good looking up on those things. And no, we can't, there's no other group, Linda is right. A chairman. All our housing money goes to the affordable housing trust fund, except for, interfaith and, whatever, the
Housing Authority.
housing authority. And housing authority may stop, or they may get satisfied with it.
We're
I was
creeping.
gonna suggest this. Because Brian sat right over there, regardless of what anyone says, you picked up on that. We are responsible for paying that money back. Regardless of if he cuts it down to like 250 or whatever. You know, it doesn't make any difference. That's why I had said what I said at that particular meeting. But I went back and I looked at this whole thing, and I looked back historically on all of this. I'm just gonna throw it out there. And I also listened very carefully when,
Christie.
Well, yeah, Christie said like, yeah, Brian said, oh, it's crazy to ask for that amount. I listened very carefully when people speak about certain things. I was gonna suggest we cut this in half and fund them only for 5 million. What that does, it leaves everything the way it is. You don't have to like, he doesn't have to like fiddle with our funds or anything like that. And it'll be approximately straight off the top every time. Like you said, like 750 or so, thereabouts, you know, every year.
Still
You
do,
don't have to like play around with the figures.
you can still do a lot with that.
Things and all of that.
Yeah, they're happy with
But
5
we
million.
are satisfied, you can.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he would, yeah.
that's a
He was
bond.
like, "You asked for more."
I can't go to 10 million. I told her that point blank.
They
I can
always
go to
ask for more than they're
5.
gonna get, I mean.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the.
5
nature of the
million.
beast.
But just so you understand, the funding from us can only be spent on units up to 100%. We can't do the one up to 150 or workforce housing. The CPC funding and across the state can only be used up to 100% of
And this,
median income, which
honestly,
is pretty good for here.
the rental assist program, after listening to her
I mean, it's such a great program, you know, and anything that we can do to help things like that for people, families on the island is huge.
We had trouble funding that in the very beginning. Those of us who've been on that long, Neville, myself and Tim,
And
we had a lot of trouble funding it to begin with.
and it also, and I think this is kind of what you were alluding to earlier, that and maybe that's why the Maya Comet's in the historical preservation, it's a 1980s building, that's affordable housing, that's getting repairs. I mean, that really should be in housing, but is there?
We tried. It can't go there. It has to go where it is.
It's repairs, that's.
So I don't wanna,
So,
I don't
so
wanna go
no,
over it again.
so, okay, I'm glad to understand
We
that. So
tried.
repairs?
It's new construction,
Well, it sounds
Or
like,
creation,
yeah,
creation.
Steve.
So I think, just to back up a quick second, 700 million, they're close enough, over time, it's gonna be the same. You've answered a question I was the reason I raised my hand is who has more latitude or leniency in their the thresholds for determination. So ours has to go to what was
100% or less.
100% or less, whereas the housing trust has more latitude.
Yeah, that's
So
why
that
we
gives me
created
a
it.
great amount of comfort
Yeah.
that we are basically in a way subbing we're reassigning our grant monies to that entity for a purpose that's consistent with our own, but in a way that covers more ground.
Yeah.
That's good.
And what we did, just so
Well,
you
wait,
know,
wait.
Satcham's Path, we funded the infrastructure. And
Okay.
we funded infrastructure for other things like this. So it wasn't for a unit, but it was to provide for Satcham's Path to actually exist. So we did all the infrastructure. So there's various things that we can do with direct grants from here. We took a bond for that. We took a bond for the fields. We took a bond for Satcham's, the fields, and these two bonds. We've had 4 bonds in the last 23 years.
The other thing is I think I would feel more comfortable, 10 million is a huge ask. And everyone understands it, they understand that, I don't think that's any surprise. But even 3 million is a huge ask. I would suggest that I would feel more comfortable that we look at a $3 or $4 million number. Part one, part two is for the next year, we get some of the extrapolations Brian has been talking about, so we can understand with paper in front of us, the repercussions of funding more next year or the following year. And then that way there's, light at the end of the tunnel for them, gives us an opportunity to explore the math and what the carrying costs are and so on and so forth. But in the meantime, they're getting a fairly significant amount of money for, as Jesse mentioned, rental assistance and other worthwhile plans. 5 million, I appreciate Neville's suggesting that, and I'm not strongly against it, but I feel more comfortable. We were talking a number in the 3 to 4. It solves, gives us maybe a couple $100,000 more towards these other projects. It's still a significant amount of money, so I just wanted to put that on.
Or just keep in mind, this is just authorization to pull it.
I
We have no
understand. I'm just
intention of
saying
pulling it right
overall-
now.
Linda, I'm
Yeah.
saying the overall amount of money, I'd be more comfortable with slightly less.
John?
I think also as a committee looking ahead, we need to try and figure out what the pie is gonna be each year. It's been dwindling, correct? So if,
Our
No,
pie?
we actually
Yeah.
went up because of
okay,
the,
well, we need to know.
we were down at 3.2.
least have an idea.
Tim, 3.2 once, about 3 or 4 years ago during the COVID, because there wasn't as much
Point
generated.
being, if we're growing our debt service, we need to know what it's coming out of, because if that pie is getting smaller, maybe we wanna consider
Exactly
not
my-
making the debt service eating out of the pie so much.
Yeah.
That's the point, I
because
think.
someday it might not be $1 million.
Right.
And Brian may present us with information that allows us to make a determination that next year we give them another 3 million. I don't know,
No,
but
no,
right
no.
now, we're not tied up with it.
I'd rather not
No.
do this bond thing every year. Tim,
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tim,
No, this, Steve, that if we fund this at, just say 5 million. That's gonna give us 3 bonds that when they're used, and that's the goal is for them to use this money to create housing. Once it's used, we're on the hook for about $350 per 5 million.
if
He
he
was
takes
here last
it, if
week.
he takes it for that same amount of time, but he's talking about spreading it out
Let
further.
let me finish. There's 3 of them. So that's 1.15 million that we're gonna be on the hook for debt service. Now, we can play with it a little bit,
He said he could get it
A
down to
little
like
bit.
200.
but you might as well think about it. If all things are being equal and they spend the money, which is the goal for them to spend the money, we're gonna be on the hook for $1 million a year until the bonds are paid for. And so I agree with the way you started this conversation, Linda. We have all these other things to fund, and I feel an obligation to fund them, the churches, the historic structures, the racket club. They don't have other places to pull money from. Since we gave the first bond of 5 million, the town now has stepped up and they've matched bond money. I mean, there's a lot of money flowing into housing now. So I don't feel like we need to be the only backstop for this. And I think if we're given $1 million a year towards housing out of 4, let's say that's the norm, we're at a 25% funding level, not 10. That's 25% of our money. So I don't want to give any more
Gotcha.
if we fund 5 this year.
Well, my only point is if
Yeah.
we don't fund 5 this year and we fund 3.5, and everyone's comfortable with 5, but then we get some numbers to determine how that's gonna play out in the future. I'm not suggesting they come back, we give them 5, and then we give them 5 next year, we give them 5 this year, and 1 next year. I'm just saying, maybe we split it in our minds and in our discussion to a number lower than 5 for this year. And we get some projections as to how it will affect us in the future, say if we gave them the extra 1.5 next year. The thing to keep in mind, I mean, we're a community, there is community preservation in this. If this money all gets spent tomorrow, it's gonna have a huge inflationary, impact on other people who aren't in these programs. If you're putting money into housing, if you're putting money into land, if you're putting money into rents, it's gonna affect what's left in the pie, because we only have a pie of housing that's so big. So I'm actually a little more comfortable with the idea of having at least a couple of years of this spread out, because if they're gonna be the type of organization, which I presume they are, where they go out and spend the money when they get it, for laudable goals, important goals, it's gonna have an immediate impact. Now, it's gonna have an immediate impact helping people, but it's also, it's gonna have an impact hurting other people. So just think a measured approach in terms of the dollar amount could be beneficial for a couple of different things. That's all.
Well, my question, my problem, I am not opposed to the 5 million. The 4 projects that they came in here with are underway. A couple of them are RFP'd out. And I know for a fact that what's missing on all 4 of these projects is infrastructure money. And that's what we have traditionally done. We did it with Sachem's Path. And if we can get all those units up, we're safe for another 3 years. But I don't have a problem with pulling a $5 million bond, knowing that Brian's gonna get it as low as he's gonna get it and spread it out as far as he can spread it out. The question that came up when Brian was here, what happens if for some unknown reason a town decides to bag the CPC? I haven't seen one town yet in the state that has opted back out once they opted in, because they just do so much good. And you really don't feel the
Well, the
pinch in your
state
pocket.
Stops it.
And
Yeah, that's
no, the
right.
state's never gonna stop it, not at this point, because too many towns are using it for housing. The town we'd still be collecting the money to pay it off.
He was clear that.
Yeah,
what was
it
already
still
allocated
it would continue to get
continue.
paid off, whether we existed as a group or not. It would continue to come out of the state funding that came back to us, which would be enough to pay off the bonds. So I don't have a problem with taking the 5 million this year. They've been pretty much told, don't come back again for a while. But I don't have a problem taking the 5 million because they're not gonna pull that, because they haven't even pulled the second bond. They just now starting to pull the second $5 million bond, when they've pretty much used up the first 5 million bond. And those were years ago that we took the first one. So they're gonna wait to pull the second bond. All this does, of voting to do the 5 million and getting it voted on at town meeting as part of our article
important
is,
detail.
is that we authorize the town to do the bond. They're not gonna do the bond right now. They're gonna, because they didn't even pull the second one until several years after we authorized them to take the second bond, 5 million. So that gives them the authorization to at some point pull that bond. But it's not gonna be this year. It's probably not gonna be next year. It's gonna be somewhere in the next 5 years, more than likely. So I don't have a problem with committing to another 5 million personally. having been through the other two bonds.
So the way I feel about it is, you know, the CYA factor, right? If we do have two, if there isn't 4 million next year, say it's 3 million or 3.5 million and that sort of thing. You know, so I would feel more comfortable having some kind of, doing like 25% less than 5 million in to cover ourselves if our funding drops 25%. Does that make sense?
No, because it doesn't really work that way.
Well,
because
what
it's-
works, I
it's
mean,
not
if you-
gonna drop or
if
go
You're still
up.
gonna owe them payment
You are.
regardless of what.
But he's
how much
going to
money
stretch
you
it
get from
out
the
as
state.
far as he can stretch it out to keep it from killing us, because the town's gonna be on the hook for it either way. So if he gets it down to 200,000, when they do trigger it, because they take a 20-year bond instead of a 10-year bond, these were 10 or 15. That makes it less painful in the long run, and we can stockpile money.
You pay more, it's like a 4-year mortgage, you're paying, you know, an extra.
That's not how it works. And we put 100 grand away every year,
Sorry, speak out.
and we stockpile money, which is what we did the first time. Neville?
Yes, Chair. If we start treating these bonds like one of our projects, that's what it'll be.
Yeah.
You dole out a couple of dollars here, a couple of dollars there, of course the town's gonna come back again. You're gonna end up with them having $10 million anyways. You know, and the chairman is right. When we started the bond process, the agreement we had with the finance department was, they're not gonna like bastardize us, they're gonna
Yeah.
look for the best monies back for the bond, they're not gonna spend the bond just to spend it, it's gonna be spent when it's needed to be spent. So it's a good investment for us. I don't really like doing it, but it's been serving us well. But if you start playing around with it, they're gonna come back every year, like you said, and you're saying, they'll come back, next year they'll come back for 2 million, give them 3 million. We should not deal with the bonds as we deal with our project, it's a whole different thing.
It's like
Yeah.
admin.
Yes, and you know, and as was said here, we are responsible for it. And no, it's not gonna be 30 years, it might be more than that, before we pay off what we owe now, if I'm gonna give them the 5. It's gonna be in the area of like 30 years or more to pay it all off. But, the town, we've trusted them this far, so they're looking for the lowest rate possible, so it wouldn't be. But also, a very important thing was said earlier, that, and I'm hoping everybody is aware of it, is that, okay, we have these bonds out there. Next year, before we do anything, you take that off the top. Right. That money comes off the top. Regardless of how much money we got, that money to pay those bonds come off the top. And whatever's left over is what we have to fund all these wonderful projects that we have.
On top of the fact, guys, that as we pay down that first one, we'll be pulling that third one. So
Right, 'cause we're not paying-
eventually we're gonna get rid of one, like we did. We got rid of the fields before we actually took over Sachem. So eventually one is gonna go away. Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah,
You
I
need to talk about the fact that your priority at the select board set was for housing.
yeah, it is pretty much our number one priority out of the 5 strategic plan areas. I think it's a really good discussion, and I'm the select board rep on the Affordable Housing Trust. I haven't spoken to Christy nor Brian nor any of my colleagues on the trust about this, but I think everything that you guys are speaking about right now is a really good debate. And in the most macro sense, as the chair said before, the problem with affordable housing is, well, there's several. It's very difficult, but since our home rule petition didn't go through the legislature for 10 years, there's no consistent funding stream. So cities and towns like Nantucket, and we are pretty much the vanguard on this. We are kind of inventing the wheel, along with some other towns like Provincetown, on how to fund this stuff and get creative, and projects like Sachem's, et cetera. And that's why we meaning the trust, the town, et cetera, asked town meeting for the 6.5 override, because we don't know whether we intend to use that because there is no consistent funding stream. And until we get that either through our home rule petition, and that's not gonna happen. The home rule petition is, the legislature is never, after working for the legislature for a while, they're never gonna give a carve out to an individual town like that.
The transfer fee, you mean?
Transfer
Yeah.
fee, the transfer fee.
There are
Like,
other towns going after it, though.
there are many, but it will
Vineyard.
either be a statewide thing, or it will be something to do with the seasonal communities definition, which EOHLC right now is writing the regs on what went through. So to Neville's point before, the town may be back. I have no idea, but it also may be that something bubbles through the legislature and there's a mechanism to have consistent funding stream, then there'll be another bonding source. So this is, again, I don't wanna, I think everything that you've all laid out is a really good discussion. And, I definitely defer to the majority on this, on whatever the number should be, based on what all your own experiences is. But I guess the point is just that because Nantucket is so unique and our needs are so, we have the same issues as every other town, city and town in the Commonwealth, but we're so far out on the outlier scale because things are so expensive and we're 30 miles out to sea. It's Ulcer's Aquifer and all the things that are unique about Nantucket, that it's a really difficult conversation. And Jesse, I want to put words in your mouth, but to your point before, what you were saying, was your point that you were saying, well, if the total number of what we get, the committee went down from 4 million to 3 million, just for argument's sake,
Right.
that would take away from these other projects.
Right.
And that might affect another church or another historic preservation project coming through. And so that would affect our total universe of funds.
Right.
And that
'cause
might
we're-
change our thinking. So that kind of weighs into the
Yeah.
CPC's decision
That's what I
on,
was-
okay,
yeah.
well, what are we gonna have next year or the year after?
Yeah, and thank you. 'cause
Well, I
maybe
can't
that's
see
what-
as much of the historic preservation the last 2 years, this year and last year. Those are the largest numbers of historic preservation we've ever seen. And the most varied, that we've ever seen. At some point, St. Paul's is gonna be done, at some point, Mariah Mitchell is gonna be done. Landmark House has gotta be almost done, because we've done everything else over there. So some of these things, that Fair Street Museum, that's almost done. Greater Light will be done. Some of these things are gonna, these big ticket items are gonna be done. And we know who's coming back year after year after year. We know the Lighthouse School isn't gonna come back. We know the Interfaith will come back. We know NHA is gonna have something else going on, but we've done almost everything for them so far, and Mariah Mitchell's the same way. So it could very well be that a lot of these are gonna fall off. So the 2 million that would be left, should it drop to 3 million, will cover what people ask for, because we know certain things are coming back every year. Rental assistance at 380 and something else like that. So we know that's happening. John and then Steve.
Quick question, is kind of procedural, but the money we identified that's still out there that comes back, can that be used for debt service, or does it have to stay
No,
in?
it's got, if there's money coming back from NISDA for an historic preservation, it has to go back into the historic preservation
Yeah,
line.
So the same.
It's not undesignated.
So you have the 10% threshold for each bucket.
Yeah.
And if you don't meet that, that money goes back into.
Goes into that line.
And it can't be used.
We've
to pay
never
off debt.
not met.
No, I know, but.
Except for open space, a
Open
couple of
space.
times we've
But
thrown money
here
into
you
that
could
and used
decide
it
to
all.
give them 214 and take 100 and put it towards the debt. Is that possible?
No,
Yeah, you could put it in undesignated.
we could put stuff into
for
undesignated
housing.
reserves,
So
but
That's
you
a-
gotta,
Can it? Wait,
wait a
I
minute.
hope the
I
debt
can't take
service-
something out of, if we got 10% and let's say we have 100,000 left in the housing reserve, which we don't. Let's say we have 100,000 there. I can't take it and move it over there.
Yeah.
No,
It's
I'm
gotta
sa-
stay there.
We said that you had to pay 400,000 to open space, and there's 85 and 314 of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But you don't have to give them all the 314.
No, you can put whatever you want into open space and stockpile it. We
Open
did for
space.
years.
It stays
And
in
then
open,
we
it can't be used
contribute-
for debt service. That's what I'm getting.
I'll
at.
give you an example.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of open space stuff come to us because it was, back in those days, it didn't include recreation. You could only put 10%, little tiny piece in recreation.
Okay.
Now it's either recreation or open space. But we couldn't do it before. So didn't have a lot of open space and certainly little recreation come. We paid for a lot of the town's play sets. playgrounds. We put stockpile, stockpile, stockpile. So when it came to buying the property out in Mattakit from the FAA, that took us, it took conservation, took 3 or 4 of us to stockpile the money. We had 750 grand stockpiled in open space because we had no open space applications year after year after year. So we were able to shove the 750 over there. And then I think it happened one more time where we just kept stockpiling, and somebody big ticket came in and we were able to do that. Now we've got open space and recreation coming in because the recreation component is now exceeding the open space part of it. So
I was just trying to
it's
get.
going up and down, depending on what line it is, Steve.
We gotta get you to raise your hand.
Yeah,
So I wanna go back to the point you made earlier. Yeah, I agree, you know, project's gonna retire out, but buildings age. The community evolves, new programs come up. There is always gonna be a need for these other, under the universe of requests for funds. So, you know, I don't wanna lose track of that in the bigger picture concept of how much do we wanna be allocating towards housing? And is 3.5 million a bond enough and due to the carrying cost or not? That's up to the group. So that's one point. The other question I have is, I don't wanna get a lot of explanations, please. I just wanna the two bonds, we have 2 bonds out currently.
Mhm.
One is the 2019 and one is the 2022, is that?
23 or 22?
Me too, I think he's right.
You got 2 bonds.
Yeah, at least.
And both of those have been not only authorized, but, the bonds have been drawn?
No,
No.
Only
this is
one.
first.
Okay.
They're
thank you.
starting into the
Uh,
second.
Thank you. So the second one, when did we fund that?
He's the chair.
Yeah, I know, but I'm never gonna get a question if I don't try and stand up for my own.
Do you remember, was it 3 or 4 years before COVID?
Thank you. So we owe that money. That money, I presume, comes out of our budget every year and it gets aggregated somewhere.
If it's
correct?
pulled, yes.
No.
No,
we-
The second one hasn't been pulled.
So okay, that helps answer, that answers that question and brings up the next question. If we say, okay, we are gonna put, does that money that we didn't spend, but we didn't dole out to anyone else that year, go into our reserve for housing? Where does that money go? Let's say we agree to this bond and this year we authorize X amount of dollars. Well, that money has to be taken out and aggregated somewhere.
no,
Well,
We
then-
did, hang on, we did. Ken made sure that when we took the first bond, that they hadn't pulled it, obviously they didn't pull it immediately. They authorized the taken. So when they did, Ken made sure that we put 350 for quite a while, just to stockpile it.
Okay.
Brian was very clear
Okay,
about
thank you.
that.
Okay,
And we
yeah,
did the same thing, starting with the second one, but not too much.
Let me,
we haven't done.
okay,
The
but,
second one, we're
Second
not.
one, we've done
stockpiling
one,
money.
I think.
okay, so, but the point is we don't know. Let's say it's $250,000 a year for the new bond. It's not, but let's just say it is for the purpose of discussion. We have to take that money off the top of what we are going to be doling out. That money doesn't get spent on the bond because it doesn't get pulled for 5 years. Where is that 250,000 that we have received?
not
Wait,
been
please,
pulled.
Tim.
He has it.
You're not listening to what I'm saying, please.
He has it. He has it set aside. It's allocated through town meeting. And it's set, it's committed,
Right,
period.
but where is it being held?
In the town.
Okay, so the town has.
We have our whole hierarchy with our stuff,
Okay, so the town has the
Yeah.
$250,000.
or
Say
whatever.
that's the cost
Yeah.
for the bond annually, and it's not pulled for 5 years. My concern is, if we're authorizing that type of activity, that's $1 million over 5 years that we're not spending. And it's just sitting somewhere towards a bond in the future. I understand what you're trying to say, but I was looking at a different part of this problem. So if we're authorizing an expenditure of $250,000 and we have to be good on it, we have to take that money out and we have to put it somewhere. Once we put it somewhere, we can't use it for anything. But if the town doesn't actually draw the bond for 5 years, that's $1 million of funding for others in the universe under CPC that we didn't dole out. And it's gonna go towards ultimately what it was authorized for, But in the meantime, it isn't being used for anything.
But we don't have to do that every year, which we didn't last year. We didn't pull,
But
we didn't pay
we-
any of it last year.
We have to do one.
Because we didn't have to. We have to do one this year because they have pulled that.
No,
So we don't
We-
have to do 250 every year. We can wait and do it when we want to do
you're
it.
missing the point. We
But it's not
didn't
tied up.
spend it, but we don't know whether it's been drawn until after the fact. So we took that 250 off the table. That 250 doesn't just disappear, it's set aside.
If we
didn't-
want to do
Linda,
that.
please, no.
I think you're missing the.
You're
point,
missing the,
Steve.
you're missing the process.
We didn't take 250.
It's not automatic.
It's not automatic.
I'm saying, if we are, I'm looking forward, if we authorize, if we vote for $250,000 in bond payments, we have to set that money aside.
If we want to.
No, Linda, we have to set it aside because we have to pay our bill when it's due. If the
No,
town
that's not
draws
how it works,
Well,
Steve.
where do we get the money
We
for that?
voluntarily figured 350. When we took the first bond, we set it up as 350 because we figured that would be a good amount. We had it.
Let's stick to
And
the,
it just, you're not listening.
I am, you're talking about a different.
We're not doing, we can put aside right now or next year when if we authorize the 5 million and they don't take it for 2 or 3 years, fine. We can say we'll put 50,000 in it. We can say we put 100,000 in it. He said we can put whatever we want in it ahead of time. When the bond is pulled, for how many years he pulls it, at what interest rate,
Then
is
we have
when
to
we
pay it.
do commit to an amount. We don't do that ahead of time.
Right.
But we voluntarily did to buy down the first bond.
So if we don't put the money forward, which is what you're saying, we don't have to. Why are we having a discussion about the overall dollar amount that we have to dole out be reduced?
Because we
If-
just have to make that discussion now, because so we're not surprised when this does come.
Right, but you're missing the very important point. If we are saying that, yes, we will support a bond sometime in the next 5 years, but it won't happen for 4 years, we should not be talking about reducing this year's overall amount that we can allocate by what the debt service is.
Agreed.
Correct.
And that's not what we're doing.
Yeah, it is.
No, we just said that we can't, we have to reduce what we can give other entities if we do.
Going
housing.
forward, as of next year. basically.
Next year, we'll probably have to pay
So we'll only do it
both
this year.
if they go ahead and trigger
No,
the second bond.
I'm talking about the new one.
The new one isn't gonna be triggered for some time. But we can voluntarily do what Ken and I did
Well-
right from the beginning, is put money, stockpile money away. So when it does come up, we can buy the bond down, or we can take, the point is, we can take less of a bond.
Well, let's
If we
clarify.
stop, hang on, this is what Brian was very clear about. If we stockpile money, we can put 100 grand in, whatever. If we stockpile money, when it gets time to pull the $5 million bond, we don't pull a full $5 million, we pull 4.5 or whatever, how much money we have stockpiled. That's the point of stockpiling, and I wouldn't suggest we do anything like that this year. But next year, we gotta have a more detailed discussion about that. But that's the point. If you stockpile the money over time for whatever bond we're talking about, then when he does pull the bond, it's for less than the 5 million. That's the point, John.
So the first bond, the payment is due this year, the 350. Is that now
We
gonna be
paid
every year
350 a
now,
couple of
or is that
times.
whenever we decide?
They pulled that, right?
They pulled that, so
Okay,
they've
so-
used
yeah.
most of
So
it
now
for
we
the 4
start paying.
projects that
Yeah,
we're talking
that's
about.
right.
Is that every year?
That's automatic.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's no
So we
more,
pay
I
it.
can decide to pay
No.
it later.
Right.
No,
So-
last year that wasn't
So
necessary.
what
to
he's
pull it.
saying now, there's 350 off the top.
Yeah.
Every year, and then maybe more if they pull some of the second.
But we've
Right.
done it for 4 years already,
And
so.
if we stockpile versus just agree to pay it when it is drawn,
Mhm.
we are also reducing
That's
our annual
Correct.
disbursement by that amount of money. And I'm
That's
just,
right.
one, I wanted to identify if that's the case, and two, I wanted to say that I would be against stockpiling. If we are not gonna be on the hook for the money, which we can budget into the future out of future total disbursement amounts, then I would prefer to be using the money during the current year for other projects.
Agreed.
As opposed to having it sit there.
Well, that's what we did last year.
Yep.
However,
That's all.
we do have to pull the 350 now, and at some point, we're gonna have to pull the other one. But we have complete control of how much money we want to stockpile to buy down what he has to borrow. Because I believe he doesn't have to borrow he didn't borrow the full 5 million on the first one, because we had already stockpiled, thanks to Ken.
Yeah.
And I believe we have at least one or two payments into the second bond.
So there's something to recommend, stockpile.
So it would be, he borrows less of the authorization to borrow
And our
5 million.
payments.
That's all we're doing is authorizing it. Obviously, all the terms and conditions and length of time, he's gonna get us the best, he was very clear, he's gonna get us the best rate and the longest time we can go. Because that is the least amount of impact on us, because we were all concerned about exactly what you're talking about and how much of an impact is it gonna have on everybody else that applies over the next 10 or 20 years. And it looked like from the way they were explaining it, that there was enough flexibility on how much we have to put aside, how long it goes, what interest rate and all that stuff. So long as we maintain our bond rating at where it is, we're in pretty good shape. So that's why I'm comfortable this year. I wouldn't do this again next year. That's why I'm comfortable with this year doing the 5 million authorization. And then we see where we go next year.
So we could technically do a 5 million authorization and not put any money towards it right now.
We can't put any money towards it right now. We don't have to.
You put,
We don't. We just authorize them and it has to go through town meeting and the rest of that.
That's not
shit.
taken off of.
That's not taken off of anything. We're gonna have to put another
Be
20,000
in
in
reserve,
here,
the 10% remainder, which isn't
like
much.
20,000.
It's not much. No, it's like 50 something, but. Oh, yeah.
It's 20,000.
Oh, no, wait, there's an antiquate. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, 20,000.
Gotta keep going lower, so why?
So they're not gonna pull it until it looks very favorable and they need the money. So it just sits there with the authorization at town meeting.
But at some point, whether it's next year or 5 years from now, all the bonds will be pulled and the bond payment will be on 3, not 1.
Right, but the other one, but it can be a lot less than what we've been putting aside. We just came up with the 350 amount
No,
because it sounded good at the time.
no, the 350 actually
It's in
dovetails
service.
with the 10%.
Yeah.
That's where that came.
Yeah, so we just, okay, 350, there you go.
So I think a fundamental aspect of the decision of the dollar amount needs to include whether we are going to stockpile it to cover the debt service, the anticipated debt service, or a portion of that, because that will determine, say we go with 5 million. And I'm more comfortable with that and knowing it won't be pulled for another year and we can fund it next year. But my preferences aside, I think it's important for us to have the discussion of, are we stockpiling the funds to cover the debt service? And if we are we funding, are we taking the money off the table and putting it in, the town is switching it into another account in whole or in part? Because that informs our decision about whether we are gonna have more money this year than if we stockpile the full amount of the debt service.
What? Are you saying put 700,000 into?
No, I'm
this
not.
one?
I'm
All right
saying
then.
what I said.
I'm not. in
Proper
favor of
room.
any,
If we're
Other
gonna
than-
stockpile, that takes money off the table.
right?
If we're not gonna stockpile, it leaves money on the table. We need to know that because that informs our decision about what we can fund other requests.
Well, it's, as I said, housing is housing. And we have 2 applications. We have one for the big one, we've got affordable housing, and
Madam
then,
Chair, if
that's
this is
it.
a two-way conversation, there's no need for me to be here. You guys have been going for 15 minutes.
well, we gotta come up with an amount that
I
everybody's
disagree.
comfortable with.
You're going for 15 minutes or more, you know, like.
I disagree.
There are other people who have something
Well,
to
raise
say.
your hand, Neville.
And my hand was raised.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
We have a conversation going. You know, like. I thought you were gonna ask what happens to the interest, because we had.
Well, I haven't been able to ask the question because I get filibustered.
We get the interest back every year.
We had that problem until we
Fix
tied
that.
into the town. The
Yeah.
town had to give us our money back.
Yeah,
And so we had that problem.
so we have a fair amount of money coming in from interest.
So the money, the simplest way to say it, I don't necessarily agree with the way you guys are saying it. We commit to the money, we go ahead, we have town meeting, the money is committed. That's why we take it off the top. We take it off the top because that money cannot be spent. That's money that we have that cannot be spent. If God forbid, everybody says that somebody say, okay, we gotta pay the bond now, we gotta have the money to pay the bond. So we are securing that. Brian comes to us, as he said, because we are one of the few people that you can come to, as far as the town goes, you know, to do it. I am saying, if we do the 5 million, they're not gonna come next year. And I'm also saying because they come, it does not mean that we have to give it to them. We could also say no. We have the power to say no. You have to understand that. It's not, we aren't committed to our life's force on the CPC to give the town anything in terms of the bond. You can refuse to give the town the bond. And then if they want, they can bring it to town meeting. And the people of the town whose money is what's going in here, they can discuss it in the town meeting floor. But we don't have to admit to it. But it serves us well, and it serves the town well, and it serves housing, the Affordable Housing Trust well for us to do this kind of thing. It serves us well. It's a service that we do. You know, in spite of everything else we make, I believe that we are an independent unit here, aside from any other board, any other commission in the town, but we are still part of the town.
Okay, let's try to come to some resolution here.
We fund the town $5 million under bond.
Authorize the town.
I'll second that for the purpose of discussion. What is our off the top number for a $5 million bond?
350.
Well, no,
Well, that's how
no,
it's
it's not.
historical-
No, it's not.
Done.
Yeah,
That's the
we-
historical.
It's gonna be
We-
lower.
No,
Because
it's
he's
gonna
gonna
be
stretch,
higher.
no, he's gonna stretch it out
If we-
further, and he's not borrowing it right now.
If we want to be stretched. out.
He's borrowing it when they need it.
I mean-
It's not being borrowed right, and it took him years to borrow the first one.
No, I understand that.
And they're just now going after the second one, and it's been
Okay.
years.
So let me be sure I understand this. We have a motion for a $5 million authorization. We don't know how much it's gonna cost us this year or in the future years. Because we have to help determine that.
Correct.
Right,
Okay. And we can also determine whether we want it to be drawn from this year's total distribution or starting next year.
Correct.
Well, yeah,
Or
you said
whatever
we
the-
can
they
determine.
have to, but no, they haven't voted to authorize it yet. We can't put any money, stockpile money in something that doesn't exist.
I'm talking about our recommendation. All of this is in a theoretical world
If they. pull those
until
bonds.
it gets
You
voted
cannot-
at town meeting.
Right, you cannot allocate any funding to this particular bond this year. When the authorization is voted on at town meeting and it comes up next year that has been authorized, the other two are already there.
I'm talking about
Then we can
fiscal
decide
year.
what we're going to, for probably 27. Then we can, that's what he was saying, 27. Then we can authorize what we want to start stockpiling. Once this is voted on at town meeting, we cannot stockpile anything for this one. We can stockpile for the second bond, which we've done here and there. But we're not doing that this year. We're only paying the first bond at 350 this year, so everybody else can get their money this
I
year.
don't know why you keep bringing that up. It's confusing the topic. It's not what. we're
Well, don't talk
discussing.
about putting stockpile away on this
I'm
particular
talking
bond.
About the conceptual, how are we approaching this bond? Are we, part of the discussion needs to be, in my mind, are we stockpiling money or are we not?
Not for this bond.
When we get to it.
Yes, that's
Because
something we
it
have to talk
affects
about.
our future allocations, the total distribution for other.
We all
entities.
understand that, Steve.
Oh, my God, Linda.
All right,
it is
can we
ridiculous.
vote, can we
Jesse.
vote on this? Can we vote on this without having to make a decision where the funds go? Right? We can vote on it.
Yeah, we all agree there's a need.
Okay, so why don't we vote on that? And then when the
Motion on the
time
floor.
comes to make the decision, how the funds go, we can deal with that then.
Motion for 5 million has been seconded, so.
Yeah.
Who made, oh, Neville made the motion?
Yes.
I said.
Steve second. Okay. $5 million for a bond for housing, Affordable Housing Trust Fund. All
And-
those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed?
No,
Is that an aye?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
Can I make a point of order?
That's not a point of order, just make a
Well, it will
statement.
be, if you let me make it. The point of order is that 1 year of the CPC can't bind next year.
Yeah.
So as much as I appreciate the sentiment that you're trying to make, whatever we do this year has no bearing on what we do next year. Just a point of order.
no, I understand. Thanks. Sam.
Or some of these phase projects, doesn't mean we're gonna give you another money next year for the second phase.
Mm.
We've done it, but there's no certainty that we're gonna keep going with any of these projects if they come back again. Neville?
No, I was gonna say, I think, I was following him and sorry. See, and I knew that's not what he was talking about, but it's okay.
Thanks.
You understand? Okay,
Okay,
things are put on.
so Friday. 9 o'clock.
Everybody good with 9 o'clock?
Yeah, pull up your counter there, Mr. Topham.
Mr. Dutra as well, wasn't in mine.
It's on her email.
Madam Chair. For Friday, now that we voted that, can we get an idea of what our total is gonna be to distribute for the others?
The remainder, you mean?
What, yeah. I need to know
Well,
what the-
sort of, but not. We still have to start cutting on
We need
each one of
something to
these.
work with.
It's
What is our total?
roughly 1.1 million
Yeah,
for the
we
other
saying.
two.
We know, I'll share it with you.
There's more, there's a lot more.
There's
but
contingencies and stuff to break out.
Contingencies and breakdowns and phasing and
Gotcha.
stuff.
Thank
That's
you.
why everybody has to
roughly.
bring in that one, the pro forma sheet as well as the
Just the total
synopsis,
of all, the 1.17.
sort of, but not. All right, Friday, Neville?
No, I just want to see, Madam Chair,
Now I know what it's like to have a chainsaw taped to your head.
Well, I was interrupted.
Sorry, you know, wise guy.
Friendly fire.
I'm just gonna say, Madam Chair, like, okay, well, you guys are gonna do an excellent job, you're gonna vote on some things that I would not vote on, I would say no, but I will not be here for the panel. I cannot be here on Friday, and I'm only back here until the 3rd
I'm sure there'll be.
of December.
Are you headed down south?
I'm not saying where I'm going, you know, I'm
Do
not
we-
gonna be back until the 3rd.
Do we have to vote on Friday?
No.
Can we continue the discussion, wait for
Yeah.
Neville? to
Just
come
gonna
back?
continue. We're just chopping.
In case you guys, go ahead. and-
No, I want to wait for you to come back. I think we should have the full board
Yeah.
for the final.
Everybody should vote on the final.
So we'll wait.
Be back?
I'll be back, I'm
September
due back on the 3rd, I probably won't be back on the island until the 4th.
Okay. Cause we don't, we'd rather have
We're going
everybody here
someplace
to
fun,
vote
Neville.
Yeah.
warm.
Yeah, we'll wait for the final. vote.
All right, so we're just gonna start chopping and see where we can get kind of a reasonable level we can get to on all of these to try to get rid of 2 million that we don't have.
Motion to adjourn?
Somebody wanna make?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to be clear, Friday, 15th, everybody have that date?
Yep.
From 9 a.m. to 12 noon.
Yep.
We're going to be in room D, which is.
That one.
there. That's just what we've been given, and also, we were scheduled to have our regular meeting next week on Tuesday.
Put whatever you got on Tuesday, so we don't have to do Tuesday for Friday.
Second,
Cause that's just, they're just fund requisitions and stuff like that.
Smart.
Cool, and then we won't have a
You gotta
meeting
post
next
tomorrow.
week.
We got to post tomorrow.
I'm gonna post today.
Good, post today.
All right, good.
All right, Eleanor made a motion to adjourn at 11:11. All those in, Joe seconded, all those in favor? Thanks, everybody. It's great to have everybody here.
I don't think that's happened since before COVID.
Yeah, I don't think so. People have been up there on the screen, but not everybody in the room at the same.